So hello everyone, my name is Pei Yi. My topic for today is the Cobb-Douglas production function to economics. So if you have studied economics, you will find there are many places mentioned about the production function. So why is production function important to economics? What can it do? So today I will introduce one simple production function, the Cobb-Douglas production function, and show you the meaning of learning this and explain what a simple equation can tell us through economic and mathematical analysis. So introduce some background. So the production function is an equation that expresses the relationship between quantities of productive factors used and the amount of product obtained. So in 1928, Charles Cobb and Paul Douglas published a function called the Cobb-Douglas production function. They use it to model the growth of American economic from 1899 to 1922. So for this production function, the output is determined by the input labor and capital. So here's our production function. Y is the total production, L is the labor input, K is capital input, is the measure of all machinery, equipment, and buildings. And A is total factor productivity, measures the change in output that isn't the result of the input. Alpha and beta is the output elasticity of capital and labor. So what that means is the percentage change of output divided by the percent change of the input. So first, let's talk about the return to scale. Return to scale measure the change in output that results from a proportional change in input. So if we increasing our input C times, we can get this equation. So C to the alpha plus beta times the original function. So the key here is to look at the alpha plus beta. When alpha plus beta greater than 1 is called increasing return to scale. We can see this three-dimensional graph. So x1 is labor, x2 is capital. So let's just choose one line to analyze. So when capital equals labor, this 45-degree line, you can see it's an exponential function, means there are more and more input, the output grow faster and faster. So such economic of scale may occur because the greater efficiency is obtained as the firm moves from small to large scale operations. So here, when alpha plus beta equal to 1, this is what we call the constant return scale. Still, the 45-degree line is kind of just a linear function. So the production also grow, but not as fast as this one. So for alpha plus beta less than 1, it's a decreasing return to scale. So as you can see, there are more and more input. The output didn't change much. So this occurs if production process become less efficient as the production is expanded. So maybe the farm become like too large. So next is the marginal product. Marginal product of a factor K or L is the extra amount of output if one unit of factor is added. Ceteris paribus means all other conditions remaining the same. So marginal product is actually the partial derivative of the production function with respect to an input. So we can do the calculation here and get the marginal product of labor and capital. So if you're still confusing about marginal product, let's look at example of the marginal product of labor. So assume we are open a pizza restaurant and we keep capital constants, means that we only have like one pizza oven here. So let's see how much the output will change every time one labor is added. So the amount of changing output, that's what we call marginal product. But you will find that marginal product is actually at first increasing, but at some point it keeps decreasing till negative and keep decreasing. So this seems too easy understood. Like if you only have one pizza oven, at the first, like 2 or 3 workers, they can improve your efficiency. But if you have 6 workers who are serving for one oven, the efficiency will be lower, even resulting in lower input. In economics, we call this the law of diminishing return. So the law of diminishing returns says that in productive process, increasing a factor of production by 1 unit while holding all other production factor constant will at some point result a lower unit of output per incremental unit of input. So to analyze this, we can look at the partial derivative of the marginal product with respect to that input. And this is also the second partial derivative. So what the second partial derivative tells us, like nothing about partial focus on the second derivative, it tells us the concavity. So when it's greater than 0, concave up, less than 0, concave down, means diminishing return here. So regarding to our equation, except alpha or beta -1 can be negative, all other terms are positive. So the key here is look at the alpha or beta -1, whether it's greater or less than 0, means alpha or beta greater than 1, concave up, less than 1, concave down. Here means diminishing return. So let's look at the equation. We have the alpha equal to 1.75, beta equal 0.25, and our graph. So let's look at the alpha. Alpha part, we fix our capital in x2, see the relationship between the output and labor and output. So you can see it's concave down, concave up, sorry. And alpha is 1.75, greater than 0, also tells us concave up. So at this time, you may want to hire more workers because they make the production in a good shape. But here for the beta, when we fix our labor constant and see the relationship between the output and capital, we can see that the capital efficiency is getting lower and lower, and beta also equal 0.25, less than 1. So it shows up concave down. So this means you're just thinking about stop buying more pizza oven, maybe. But think about the return to scale. Actually, return to scale here is 2, 1.75 plus 0.25, actually 2, greater than 1. So at first we talk about the return to scale. This is greater than 1 means increasing return to scale. So if you're increasing all labor or capital C times, even the capital is diminishing return, but it will eventually give you an increase in return to scale. So this is our marginal product and law of diminishing return. So next, I want to talk about how we find the maximum production. So here is our graph. We have alpha equal beta equal 0.25. This means both from labor or capital, they are diminishing return, and add together, they are decreasing return to scale. So, but now we don't care about this. We just want to know how we find the maximum production. So under some constraint, how we find maximum production. So it's like this point is easy to see, but how we find it, we slice it horizontally. And then at some point, the counter line is tangent to the constraint. That point is our maximum production. And if we keep slicing, we get 2 points, and they are not maximum production. So counter lines and the constraint, but still how we set up the equation. So here we are using the gradient. The gradient, there's a gradient perpendicular to the tangent line of the counter line, the blue one. And there also a constraint. The constraint also has a gradient, the red one. So they're both orthogonal to same tangent line, means that their scale multiplies of one another. So gradient of g equal to lambda, some constant, times the gradient of y equal to lambda times the gradient of g. So this is the Lagrange multiplier in mathematics. So Lagrange multiplier is, let's just look at the example. So we have a Cobb-Douglas production function, y equal 30L to the 0.9, k to the 0.1. And L is the labor cost, $900 per unit. case capital costs 1,800 per unit, and total cost is limit to $1,080,000. Find the maximum output. So we have our Lagrange multiplier equation. First, let me find our constraint. Constraint is the cost of labor plus cost of the capital equal to the limit to the money. So here we got our constraint, and we can simplify this. And here we have gradient of y and gradient of g. So we can set up a system equation can solve this problem. So after we set up system equation, we solving for lambda in the first equation and substitute into the second equation, get a relationship between k and l, and substitute into the third equation. We got k equals 60, L equal 1,080, and K and L for maximum production. Put K and L into our Cobb-Douglas production function. We get maximum output 24,267. So here's how we calculate the maximum output. But what is this economic meaning of this? Because previously we set up this equation based on the graph. Is there any economic meaning behind this? So let's look at the gradient of y. It's the partial derivative of y respect to L and K. Lambda is just lambda. Gradient of g is partial derivative of g respect to L and K. Let's just choose the labor to analyze. So partial derivative of y respect to labor equal to lambda times the partial derivative of g of respect to labor. So what is this? This is actually the marginal product of labor. This is the extra amount of output if 1 unit of labor is added. And the green one is the extra amount of money if 1 unit of labor is added. And the lambda, in economic, we call it the marginal productivity of money, means the additional amount of output if $1 is spent on labor. So let's just look at this equation. So this means the extra amount of output if one labor is added. This is extra amount of money when one labor is added. This is extra amount of output if $1 is spent. So we cancel the money, we get this equation. So the Lagrange multiplier works for economic. So go back to story about marginal productivity of money. So the lambda from previous example, we got this. If we plug in our K and L for maximum production into the equation, we got 2.247. This means for each additional dollar spent on production, an additional 2.247 unit of product can be produced. So this is our Lagrange multiplier. And what we learned from the Cobb-Douglas production function, we know each letter represent return to scale, marginal product, law of diminishing return, maximum production. And we analyze some graphs, some equation, and some economic meaning. So from a simple production function with just like 2 input, we can see so many things. And there are just some of the information we can get. There also has more complex analysis. So the production function is not the function just calculate production. It also allows us from small to see large, from now to see the future. So here's my reference. And thank you for watching.
That was awesome. Thank you so much, Faye.
So now
go ahead and stop sharing. So now we will go into our quick 5-minute live Q&A. I'm going to start off by asking if the audience has any questions. You can either go ahead and ask or drop them in chat and I can read them. Okay, then I'm going to start off. Oh, do you have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, my first question is, you saw how this was analyzed in your economics course, and then we are also discussing it in our calculus 3 course. How would you compare the differences? Is everybody in economics course familiar with the partial derivatives and all that, or how is that handled in the economics course? I'm just using the opportunity that you took both so that you can tell me actually how different it looks.
Actually, in economic class, we're not talking about partial derivative. Like partial derivative, not that important. We only see the concept, like when we fix one variable and see how other react. So we actually don't do the calculation, but understand the concept is more important.
Oh, I see. And one more thing, I'm just curious, and I'm not sure that I see that directly. You analyze second partial derivatives, both on the capital and the labor.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any meaning in mixed partial derivatives? First on capital and then on labor. It must be, but I don't know if they analyzed it. Did you see anything like that?
For now, I didn't see anything about that but there must be some reason, some meaning behind it, but it's not that useful to.
It might be, yeah. Probably people will look at it, but I was just curious looking at your
question. They're not very useful, but in general, we more like talk about the second derivative, like with respect to same input.
And thank you. I liked, very nice presentation from my perspective.
Thank
you. Well, my question is, I know you talked a bit at the end there, kind of like an overview of what we learned during the presentation. What do you think is like the biggest takeaway that we can get from it?
So big takeaway is like, if you are going to start a business, so it allows us like from small thing to can use this simple equation to can see how is your company is going good, or maybe too many laborers, too many capitals, and how can I get the maximum production from this equation. So that's
awesome. Thank you. Does anyone else have a question they'd like to ask?
I am not a math and science person. Christine and I were talking about that before this presentation. But what drew you to this topic specifically? I'm just intrigued always with math and science, since it's not my wheelhouse. What made you want to study this particular concept?
Because I'm starting to think about doing the data analyze for my future career. So maybe analyze some economic things, and also I learned the calculus 3, and then I want to start thinking about how are these two things relate to each other, and what can I get from calculus to analyze the economic things. So that's what I'm thinking at first.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, we need people like you in the industry and in the world. My dad's an economist and my husband's an agronomist. So I'm starting to get into the STEM world a little bit, but it's really great that we have people like you in this field. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us.
Thank you.
All right, well, that was an excellent presentation implementing calculus into economics. If we don't have any more questions, I will announce the next presenter, who is Harley Hughes, and she will be presenting on how we look towards cars and how we can make them safer for the environment. So give me just 1 second to share my screen for her presentation. Okay. And here is Harley's presentation.
Hello and welcome. My name is Harley Hughes, and today we will be looking into the technological advancements of the car to meet both human and environmental needs. From simply starting out as a simple gas-powered car in 1886, all the way to the electric-powered smart cars that we have today. Some of the advancements made to the car were either changing laws, putting restrictions into place, and finding new ways to power the car that auto companies constructing cars today must follow or are starting to follow. When one learns to drive, the most important lesson that we are all taught is first and foremost, be safe. Make sure that you're always watching the road, checking your mirrors, braking, being cautious of your surroundings, so that we don't hurt anyone or hurt ourselves. Car companies have been making this a forefront for new technology that is added to cars each year to make cars safer for humans. Such safety features that have been added is facial recognition systems and automatic emergency braking systems, AEB for short. Automatic emergency braking software has sensors throughout the whole car that detect when a driver is headed on a collision course and can sense that unless the driver takes immediate action now, such as braking themselves or shifting lanes, they are headed on a collision course. So the automatic emergency braking system will start to brake for the driver or start to slow down so that a car crash is prevented. According to Forbes, there is data that show rear-end collisions fall by 50% on vehicles with the automatic emergency braking system. The image we have here depicts how the sensors work for the automatic emergency braking system. We can see that there are sensors surrounding the whole car in the center that is able to sense the 4 cars around it, also the pedestrians that are crossing the street as well, and new automatic emergency braking systems are able to sense when a vehicle is approaching a red light and the driver has not started to brake or slow down. Thus, they will start to slow down the car for the driver as well. As someone that has a safety feature on their car themselves, I can attest to how quickly this system will detect any potential collisions. Further ways that the car industry has changed the way that they produce cars to be either safe for humans or safe for the environment is what makes the car run, such as oil. Oil has been the leading source of fuel since the very first car came out in 1886. According to Daniel Sterling, oil is a remarkable substance that has bestowed huge benefits on humanity. As much as oil has benefited humanity, it also has many drawbacks or downsides to it, such as the high amounts of CO2 which is released upon consumption that the car has taken in, or the damage it does when it is spilled in the oceans, as we have seen in the past. Such damage can be seen from the image we have here, in which an oil rig in the ocean is engulfed in flames from the flammable oil. Thus, oil is leaking not only on the oil rig, but is also leaking into the ocean and hurting the environment. The main concern that most countries have in the dwindling oil reserves that our planet has. Thus, car companies switch gears towards new eco-friendly fuel and ways to power the vehicles. So our auto companies are turning to electric-powered batteries or hybrid models of vehicles. By switching to electric-powered batteries, it is done with the hope of reducing the amount of carbon dioxide that is released from the vehicles and into the planet and the environment. An all-electric car is expected to produce 189 grams of carbon dioxide for every mile driven over its lifetime on average. Now, 189 grams of carbon dioxide is still a very large amount. However, it is significantly less when compared to a gas-powered car. A new gasoline-fueled Toyota Camry is estimated to produce 385 grams of carbon dioxide per mile. Thus, leading us to believe or come to a conclusion that the electric-powered vehicles have significantly more advantage when looking and comparing vehicles to be more eco-friendly or not. Thus, in conclusion, we started out at a simple gas-powered, not really tech-savvy vehicle that was solely running on oil, very little features when it came to technology, all the way from 1886 to using eco-friendly fuel that we have in cars today with new safety features for both the driver and for the environment as well. Now, can the car be more eco-friendly? Yes. I think that it can be improved to, in turn, improve the planet and improve the safety for humans as well. However, I think that there have been many advancements that have not only benefited humanity, but the advancements have benefited the planet as well. When looking at the advancements that have already been made to the car, I think we are on a very good track and a good start to one day truly be running a truly safe car to drive and a truly eco-friendly vehicle. Thus, in turn, I believe that I can say that the future of the car is looking to be a little bit greener. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation.
All right, thank you so much, Harley. That was an awesome presentation. We are going to go into our Q&A. So does anyone have any questions right off the bat? Again, you can drop them in chat or just unmute yourself.
I have one. So do you have a favorite green car or company?
It's hard to pick a favorite. However, personally, in my family, we always drive Fords. That's just because that's how we grew up. My grandfather worked for the Ford company back in Detroit when they're at the top of their game. But I think that honestly, how the electric cars are turning toward, such as like Teslas, I think are very eco-friendly and show really good promise for the future. Personally, I think that eventually they'll all eventually be the electric powered vehicles. I think that eventually we're going to move from the oil powered cars. I know that California, I believe in 2030 or so, has stated that that is their goal, to be only running electric powered vehicles.
Nice, yeah. My husband was super interested in the Honda Clarity with the hydrogen fuel cell. We almost leased one of those. It looked pretty cool. The technology is awesome.
My question is, I know you talked about how electric cars are the best option, but they still have a lot of room for improvement. Do you have any plans for future research on like how they can be improved?
It's a topic that personally I will be kind of keeping a tab on, just because for personal reasons, I think it's really important that we try to be a little bit greener, just because over the years we've seen how there's global warming, or the way that we are living right now isn't the best or for the environment. So I think that we'll be able to improve it by our means of transportation, just because humanity is always moving. We're always trying to go places. We're never really at a standstill, and changing how we all transport ourselves, I think, would be a huge benefit towards the planet.
Absolutely. Thank you. Any other last minute questions you'd like to ask Harley? Okay, well, thank you so much, Harley. Awesome presentation. If we just want to move on to our last presentation of the day, or of this session, we have Isabel Beck, and she will be presenting on artificial intelligence and its inherent advantages that are programmed to have accuracy and effectiveness in surgery. So again, give me 1 second to share my screen. All right, and here is Isabel's presentation.
Hello everyone, my name is Isabel Beck, supervised by Professor Pamela Perry, and today I will be presenting Artificial Intelligence Making an Impact on Surgery. A quick overview on everything I will be talking about today. I will first start off with the purpose of my research and what it has to offer, along with some background information on artificial intelligence and surgery. With the background information, I can talk about some of the aspects of improvement artificial intelligence has brought into surgery, with some of the many improvements artificial intelligence has made over the years. And now let's get started. So artificial intelligence has been successful and have improved a lot through conducting many medical operations and experimenting with different specialties, as research papers and studies all talk about the ways they accomplish certain things with artificial intelligence. But researchers never talk about artificial intelligence accuracy as a whole. The purpose of my research is because throughout the years of research and studies on artificial intelligence making a breakthrough with surgery in the medical field, there are not many sources of information on the accuracy of the effectiveness and safety artificial intelligence provides. In other words, I'll be focusing on the improvement artificial intelligence's accuracy has made in surgery and what it has to offer. With that being said, artificial intelligence accuracy in surgery is misled throughout the years of improvement. Despite knowing it has been successful, there is no research on the overall aspect of accuracy artificial intelligence provides. But there is a comprehensive overview of artificial intelligence that is applied to surgical environments, says Dr. Wren. the overall aspect of accuracy artificial intelligence brings into surgery. Some background information on artificial intelligence and surgery is that surgery and artificial intelligence are two very different things that support each other in many ways. Artificial intelligence is performed with the skills and knowledge to perform surgery, as artificial intelligence takes note of the performance to also perform surgery, but in its own way. Surgery and artificial intelligence are both very popular, as they are improving every year with new techniques and outcomes. As said in the last slide, there's a broad aspect of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and their ethical consideration in healthcare. Artificial intelligence has enormous potential to assist in medicine, particularly when assessing and processing large volumes of data, as artificial intelligence has a significant impact in robotic surgery, says Johnson. The broad aspect of artificial intelligence has shown a lot of improvements in surgery, as there are new skills and knowledge that go into being successful. Artificial intelligence's accuracy in surgery opens up new doors on improvement throughout the years, as that with this broad aspect. Some background information on artificial intelligence. As many of you may know, artificial intelligence is a simulation of human intelligence in machines that are programmed to think like humans and mimic their actions. Artificial intelligence is trying to bring their skills that are programmed into robotics to help assist in surgery. Let me inform you that artificial intelligence has grown and improved in many ways, as it is making way into the medical field, where there could be many benefits leading up to this. Artificial intelligence is included in our everyday lives, as it is normal at this point. It is hard to remember a time when we weren't reliant on computers. The capabilities of computer systems that mimic human cognition and learns from experience are expanding rapidly. The penetration of artificial intelligence in all of its forms into the healthcare market is a set that will grow dramatically in the next few years, says Holton. Background information on surgery. As you may know, surgeons have some of the most interesting careers, as they help people in more ways than we know. Most of all, surgeons have a long way to go to be qualified. They go through a number of years just studying to be the surgeons that everyone depends on, as they are well educated and having the skills and knowledge they collect over the years. Surgery is not surgery without the surgeons, as they are the ones that are performing the surgery with all of the skills and knowledge they encounter in their career. Surgery is used worldwide, as there are a number of medical operations that are considered surgery. Surgery saves and helps many people who are in need, as it can be done for a number of reasons. Most of all, humans' lives are full of obstacles and challenges that are harmful, but surgery is a way of reassuring people that they can help when it is needed. Surgery is an indispensable element, and surgery is still a promise, says Barr. Surgery is a necessary element in humans' lives, and it saves everyone's lives once in a while. More information on artificial intelligence impacting surgery. You may ask why artificial intelligence is trying to improve surgery. There are many skilled and experienced surgeons, but in surgery, even though surgeons may be qualified and have the experience, they could still make mistakes. That is where artificial intelligence could step in to reduce human mistakes. All humans make mistakes in their day-to-day life, and it is normal to make mistakes and learn from them, especially in surgery. Artificial intelligence can also make mistakes, but they can also learn and improve as well, as they are taking in human intelligence, which means there could be some mistakes along the way. Artificial intelligence is learning from the mistakes they could make and improve to become more efficient in the long run. Artificial intelligence is improving the performance of surgery with its accuracy without a doubt. Artificial intelligence is always improving while also making mistakes along the way, as it already has another beginning to transform many aspects of healthcare, says Fulton. Artificial intelligence is improving with encountering mistakes along the way, but, as said, the aspect of improvement have transformed surgery and has shown a lot for artificial intelligence at the end. Aspects of improvement. Many may ask how they are affecting surgery with artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence has shown significant improvement over the years with surgery, as it has improved many things, such as patient safety and care, as the patient could have higher survival rates with patients recovering quicker than usual. All because artificial intelligence in surgery has allowed precision and accurate movement in these complex operations. Another thing would be the effectiveness on time, as in the operating room, surgeons should take their time because precision is key in surgery. But when artificial intelligence operates, they are programmed to be precise with every incision and conduct in a faster pace than normal, as this is very effective when it comes down to saving time and energy. And lastly, since artificial intelligence is invasive with complex operations conducted, there is minimal blood loss and pain as the patient is at lowest risk for any side effects or infections because of artificial intelligence accuracy. All of these improvements are helping surgeons in the operating room and making surgery have better outcomes. Artificial intelligence has shown a great amount of accuracy by the aspects I have just presented. In addition to the aspects of improvement, the patient's health and care are the two main important things that surgeons look for, especially as artificial intelligence dynamics become more prominent, as successful learners must find alternative routes forward, says Bain. The aspects of improvement is a good sign whether our artificial intelligence has encountered something bad or good, as improvement means that artificial intelligence is getting somewhere in improving the performance of surgery. As well as this image is a revolution of a surgical robotic called the Da Vinci, as this is a form of artificial intelligence used in surgery that has been improving surgical performance throughout the years. As this machine has been very successful, it has gone through numerous surgical operations. As you can see throughout the image, that the robotic improves, as every few years there is something different than the next. The robotic image shows that all the way from 1999 to 2017, as of the present, the Da Vinci has conducted over 7 million surgical procedures. The Da Vinci shows people that artificial intelligence has the accuracy to perform surgical procedures and has the ability to improve. Similarly to the image, artificial intelligence is the same, with also having the same improvements throughout the years. As stated by Barr, artificial intelligence is becoming ubiquitous, revolutionizing many aspects of our lives. In surgery, it is still a promise. Artificial intelligence has the potential to improve surgical performance and impact on patient care. To conclude, artificial intelligence has improved the performance of surgery and the overall care of its patients with its accuracy. There have been many challenges and obstacles along the way in improving surgery. The idea that artificial intelligence could perform surgery is remarkable, as I hope this presentation showed you that artificial intelligence has many inherent advantages to accuracy and effectiveness in surgery, and how it plays an innovative role in enhancing surgical performance. Accuracy is key when it comes to artificial intelligence in surgery. These are all the sources I used. And that concludes my presentation of artificial intelligence making an impact on surgery. Thank you so much for your time, and if you have any questions, please be free to ask. Thank you again.
All right, thank you so much, Isabel. That was awesome. We'll go right into our live Q&A. Anyone has any questions right off the bat? Again, unmute yourself, so drop them in chat. I'm going to start off by asking if you think that artificial intelligence in surgery will be taking off soon, or in the near future, we're going to have like mostly AI instead of human surgeons.
I mean, already throughout the years, artificial intelligence has been making an impact on surgery. So I would say in the future, there will definitely be more AI than human surgeons.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. Would anyone else like to ask a question at the moment? Just give me a second.
Is this a field of study that you would like to work in eventually, or just research more about, or what's your interest in this field?
It's more like a research, like I was just like very interested in artificial intelligence overall, but narrowing down my subject and seeing what surgery has to offer, it was just really eye-opening to see how artificial intelligence has impacted in surgery and what it has to offer.
Thank you. It's fascinating.
Can I ask what your most difficult challenge was in this presentation? Or like, did you have any trouble with the research?
There wasn't really a difficult part, just that it was very hard to find like articles, like recent articles on artificial intelligence because of how every year it's improving, but they don't really like the studies and research don't really show what they find in the accuracy part of how surgery has improved.
Interesting, thank you. Do we have any last minute questions for Isabel? Okay.
Okay. Sorry, I think that I shared it without my volume, so let me try that one more time. All right.
Hi, my name is Andrew.
Hello, everyone.
Sorry. All right, let's try this again.
Hi, my name is Andrew. Today I'm going to be talking about dynamic programming and its real-life applications. For those of you who are not familiar with computer science, you may have asked yourself, what is dynamic programming? Is it even relevant to my life? As a matter of fact, it's actually very relevant to all of our lives, but to understand why it's so important to us, we have to first understand what it is. Dynamic programming is an algorithmic technique for solving problems. And an algorithm is a finite series of steps that help solve a problem. You may have heard the term algorithm used in some fancy context about a genius using an algorithm to do something highly complex, usually in programming. However, the truth is you may have followed some algorithms hundreds or thousands of times. One of the most obvious examples of an algorithm is a recipe. It's a finite list of instructions used to perform a task. For example, if you were to follow the algorithm to create brownies from a box mix, you would follow the 3 to 5 step process written on the back of the box. That is all about an algorithm. Pretty simple, right? Now that you have a clearer picture of what an algorithm is, let's dive right into what dynamic programming is. As I mentioned, dynamic programming is an algorithmic technique, but it's specifically designed for solving an optimization problem by breaking it down into simpler subproblems and utilizing the fact that the optimal solution to the overall problem depends upon the optimal solution to its subproblems. To put it simply, dynamic programming is suited for solving problems where the same work is being repeated over and over. Dynamic programming does not work for every problem. To determine whether we can optimize a problem using dynamic programming, you can look at two formal criteria of dynamic programming problems. First, a problem must have overlapping subproblems for dynamic programming. Subproblems are smaller versions of the original problem, and any problem has overlapping subproblems if finding its solution involves solving the same subproblem multiple times. Let's take the Fibonacci numbers as an example. To find the fifth Fibonacci number, we need to break it down into the following subproblems. If you look at the Fibonacci tree here, we have the overlapping subproblem pattern as the first Fibonacci number has been evaluated 5 times and the second Fibonacci number has been evaluated 3 times. Therefore, it's fair enough to say that Fibonacci numbers have overlapping subproblems. Second, a problem must also have an optimal substructure property. Any problem has optimal substructure property if its overall optimal solution can be constructed from the optimal solutions of its subproblems. If you look at the Fibonacci tree again, the fifth Fibonacci number is a product of the third and fourth Fibonacci numbers. This clearly shows that a problem of size n has been reduced to subproblems of size n-1 and n-2. Therefore, the Fibonacci numbers have optimal substructure property. If a problem meets the 2 formal criteria for dynamic programming, it's time to solve the problem. Though there are 2 methods that dynamic programming offers to solve a problem, a method called the top-down with memoization is how many tech giants are using dynamic programming. In this approach, we try to solve the bigger problem by recursively finding the solution to smaller subproblems. Because understanding this concept requires some experience with computer science, I'm going to replace the formal definition of this method with a simpler example. Imagine you're stuck in traffic. You can take many different routes from your apartment to your office or your school. Let's say you encounter many intersections on your way. At each intersection, you can take either a left, go straight, or turn right. Each intersection has a different amount of wait times depending on the traffic in that region. Now you have to optimize your route such that there is a minimum overall delay. Dynamic programming reduces the number of computations by moving systematically from one end to the other, building the best solution as it goes. The way it solves the problem is by moving backward from the office or school to your apartment. If you are in any intersection with no further intersections to go, you have no decision to make and simply incur the delay corresponding to that intersection. In the next intersection, you only have to decide the best possible route until the next intersection because you have already found out the best way to get from the last intersection to your destination. This way, you're not recomputing anything. You continue the same approach until you reach the apartment. This is how the top-down method works. This optimization reduces time complexities from exponential to polynomial for many problems. Time complexity refers to the computational complexity that describes the amount of computer time it takes to run an algorithm. So the fact that dynamic programming reduces the time complexity by much is why a lot of tech giants find dynamic programming so appealing. In fact, we can find the applications of dynamic programming in our everyday life. Let's take COVID as an example. Ever since coronavirus began to penetrate through every aspect of our lives, almost every country has suffered from the scarcity of testing kits to accurately track the new coronavirus. To effectively help deal with the scarcity, a lot of experts advocate the group pool testing method for coronavirus screening using dynamic programming. As you can see here, experts identified the subproblems in this sample, divided them into multiple groups, and applied the same algorithms to find out who has contracted the coronavirus. This new model with dynamic programming has allowed many countries to minimize the total number of test kits and the number of stages. That reduced number of test kits signifies the optimal use of resources, while the number of stages reduces the time required to identify the infected person. So it's fair to say that dynamic programming has helped all of us tremendously in the collective effort of bringing the normal back into our lives. In addition to that, dynamic programming is also used in a variety of ways. Let's take Google Maps as an example, as it seems really relevant to our lives. Google Maps was built upon the basis of the algorithms for the traveling algorithms for the traveling salesman problem, that is to find the shortest possible route that visits every city exactly once and returns to the starting point. The traveling salesman problem can be solved through dynamic programming with the time complexity being polynomial. That means dynamic programming has improved the quality of our lives tremendously with Google Maps that dynamic programming enables and allowed us to save more time. My presentation has only touched on the tip of the iceberg because I try to keep it simple and easy to understand for everyone, assuming no prior experience with computer science. And there's a lot more for you to explore about dynamic programming. I hope my presentation ignited your interest in computer science and dynamic programming, as computer science and dynamic programming are now an important aspect of our lives, and they affect and influence our lives in so many ways. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Andrew, for your presentation. As someone who, as you correctly assumed, knows nothing about computer science, I definitely appreciated it. Can you, I know that you can't turn on your video, it sounded like, because of your Zoom connection, but are you able to speak and answer questions?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'll answer the questions in the chat. So as I mentioned, dynamic programming is very limited in terms of its usage. So like a few of apps or services can use it, like take advantage of dynamic programming, because not many problems have like the properties of dynamic programming. So it's kind of limited, but if the requirements are met, like dynamic programming is very useful. Like it reduces the time complexity from exponential to polynomial, and it's really a big deal because for like tech giants like Google or like another tech giants, that's really a big deal because it reduces a lot of time as well as a lot of cost, like a lot of money in there. So yeah, and yeah, I'm taking this right now, so it was very this class is really interesting and useful in understanding computer science as well as the mathematics. Like it lifted my understanding of computer science and mathematics, and my professor Zika Pervik really helped me a lot. Thank you so much.
I guess he'll get some extra credit for that comment or something. That's great. Does anyone else have a question? If not, I can ask one. Andrew, are you going to do more research on this, and what's kind of the next logical step for you in learning more about this concept?
Actually, I got accepted to UC Berkeley this year, so as a data science major, so like naturally I have to study a lot about this. So yeah, that's pretty much. I do not have like a solid kind of plan right now for now, but yeah, I'm going to study about this, and because as I mentioned, it's really useful in optimizing and making an optimal solution to some problems. I'm going to study this a lot in the future. I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. What was something that surprised you, or maybe what was the most interesting and exciting thing you learned in your research?
Actually, the most interesting part of this research was I can apply dynamic programming to some games or like some things that I've experienced in my past. Like for example, take Tower of Hanoi as an example. Like as a child, I couldn't figure out how to solve the Tower of Hanoi, like how to optimize my way to solve this problem. But by using dynamic programming, I realized it's very easy to solve, and it's easy to optimize my solution. So like the fact that I can apply a lot of things about dynamic programming to my life was the most interesting part. And yeah,
Awesome.
yeah, it's the connection was just intriguing. Yeah,
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I know everyone really appreciated your presentation. So thank you so much for sharing with us. And with that, I will move us into our next presentation, which is Rosie Gutierrez, and her faculty mentor is Pamela Perry. And her topic is Automating Oppression, How Algorithmic Bias Normalizes Discrimination in Everyday Social Applications. So I think that this will also be a fascinating conversation and topic to learn about. So let me go ahead and share my screen with you all and get us started.
Hello everyone, my name is Rosie Gutierrez, and today I will be talking about algorithmic bias and the different types of impact it has on society and the underprivileged. Unconscious and implicit biases come with the territory of being human, and those biases get inadvertently embedded in the technology that we create. One of the main points to be addressed is that as a society, we are conditioned to think of mathematics and computers as objective neutral entities incapable of bias. Unfortunately, this is a huge misconception and also serves as a shroud for tech companies to hide behind in order to avoid accountability. The impact of algorithmic bias is already self-evident and continues to affect society on a daily basis with varying degrees of harm, ranging from inconvenience to the normalization of discrimination and loss of opportunity. In order to address some of these issues, we will take a look at the underlying causes of rampant bias, as well as ways to mitigate and even prevent harm going forward, and why these solutions cannot be left up to tech companies. An algorithm is simply a set of instructions on how to process data in order to get desired outputs from given inputs. While this may sound harmless in theory, the fact of the matter is that when certain conditions in the rules are not accounted for, it can cause the algorithm to output unexpected results. Some of these instructions reflect a very narrow worldview because the primary architects of these algorithms are disproportionately of a single demographic. This can result in unexpected consequences for those outside that demographic, even if harm was never really intended in the first place. This is a very basic model that researchers use to map the debate behind the ethics of widespread use of algorithmic tech. The epistemic concerns detail the root of algorithmic decision-making, which uses data that may not always be reflective of all users, but yet said data is used to make decisions about them on a daily basis. This leads to larger normative concerns, where said decision-making creates unfair outcomes for those misrepresented in the datasets due to the implicit biases embedded in the algorithms. This further exacerbates negative perceptions and misconceptions. Finally, the nature of algorithms as tools for rapid data processing, compounded with their swift distribution among tech makers, make it incredibly difficult to pinpoint the source of discriminatory behavior, thus making it near impossible to determine who should be held accountable for the harm caused. So moving into some examples of harm caused by algorithmic technology, this is an example of bias just found in everyday applications, your search engine. Author Sophia Omoyo-Noble has several other disturbing examples within her book, and this is only one example out of many that I was able to replicate. Googling black girls yields pornographic results. Black teenagers yields mugshots. And even searching terms like gorillas will return images of black individuals. Conversely, Googling unspecified terms like man, woman, and teenager will yield normal pictures of happy white people. It used to be that predictions used to return extremely racist rhetoric as well, but Google has thankfully since implemented a report feature for inappropriate predictions. However, as you can see, image search results still contain an enormous amount of bias. This quote by MIT grad student and founder of the Algorithmic Justice League, Joy Bolamwini, really puts AI and algorithms into perspective. She was one of the researchers behind a study which found bias within facial recognition software from companies like Google, Amazon, Microsoft, IBM, Kairos, and Face++. At the time of this study, Amazon was selling their facial recognition technology to law enforcement despite the high margin of error in non-white females. The issue finally got some attention once the software was run on members of Congress. The software misidentified nearly every non-white congressman. Ms. Bolamwini found that the reason for this huge margin of error was that the datasets used to train this facial recognition algorithms were so disproportionately white and male that the software had trouble identifying anything else accurately. One of the biggest issues with facial recognition lies in the negative feedback loop that it tends to create. As individuals get detained due to misidentification, the data will show that individual as having been detained before, thus increasing their chances of being detained in the future, even if the first instance was baseless. This increases over-policing in underprivileged communities. In a study by Straw and Callis and Birch, biases were found in an AI used to diagnose patients. The data used to train the AI was riddled with discriminatory practices, and that translated into the AI operations. The study found that the AI dismissed pain in women and people of color, and in side-by-side comparisons, diagnosed women with bipolar disorder, while men with the exact same symptoms were diagnosed with PTSD. The AI developed some of the same biases currently present in the healthcare industry, only now those biases are the norm thanks to the widespread use of the AI. This is one of many ways of how algorithmic bias normalizes harm and threatens the health and safety of underprivileged groups. A precedent-setting victory was won when a group of teachers banded together to challenge the educational value-added assessment system, a proprietary algorithm model which determined that historically well-performing teachers were underperforming and not bringing value to the school, which ultimately threatened their employ despite all previous tangible evidence of excellence. No one was able to ascertain the reason behind the algorithm's decision-making, thus ruling it unconstitutional as a 14th Amendment violation. Despite this precedent and the victory, similar dubious algorithmic models are still used to this day to arbitrarily assess people's competency or hiring potential. As we've seen from a few examples, algorithms have some deeply disturbing underlying issues. They cannot be taken as objective truth, since an algorithm is a formula for a desired result by a programmer. The definition of a desired output is completely up to the programmer. But as we discussed before, even if an algorithm is designed with a specific output in mind, it is possible that the instructions will be interpreted in a way that the programmer was not expecting, simply because it made sense given the inputs provided. The nature of the fast-paced data processing reinforces the anomalies, and it becomes incredibly hard to debug even for the programmers themselves. So given the research, I believe that there are 3 very significant underlying causes causing rampant algorithmic bias. First, a lack of diversity in engineer groups, which then leads to instructional blind spots within the algorithms. As we've seen, the technology works predominantly on a very small demographic of the population, who also happens to be the primary demographic of those engineering it. Second, tech companies who are unwilling to address issues within their own systems and instead opt to try to discredit or retaliate against those who point out the flaws in their software. When Ms. OMNI first published her research along Dr. Gabru in regards to the alarming bias found in facial recognition, Amazon immediately attempted to discredit their work. Third, a complete lack of accountability. As Dr. Kathy O'Neill pointed out in Weapons of Math Destruction, those who own the code essentially have all the power over those that they deploy it against. Given the aforementioned issue with tech companies being incapable of addressing their technology in good faith, a federal regulation agency specializing in algorithmic technology should be established in order to ensure some sort of accountability going forward. The latest executive summary from the United States Equal Opportunity and Employment Commission shows an abysmal percentage of Black, Indigenous, and people of color in tech. Women are also extremely underrepresented at 23.8% overall in engineering positions. This disparity becomes even greater once the intersection of race and gender is taken into account. It is not hard to see why technologies like facial recognition affected women of color so prominently given this data. Note that people of different gender expression are completely unaccounted for. During the facial recognition technology impact on our civil rights and liberties congressional hearing, Ms. Buolamwini noted that facial recognition actually excludes people of alternative gender expression, which once again correlates with the representation data being shown here. The incident that made me lose all faith in tech companies' ability to hold themselves accountable was Dr. Gabru's termination from the Google AI ethics team after concerns of bias in language models were rug swept. Frustrated, she emailed her team and told them that it was futile to continue to work and conduct painstaking research if it was going to be dismissed anyway. In her email, she wrote, and I quote, "Your life starts getting worse when you start advocating for underrepresented people. You start making other leaders upset. There is no way more documents or more conversations will achieve anything," unquote. For this, she was locked out of her accounts, and Jeff Dean then released a statement saying they had accepted her resignation, an attempt at gaslighting and discrediting Dr. Gabru. Dr. Mitchell, Gabru's co-lead, then released an open letter criticizing Gabru's abrupt firing, garnering thousands of signatures from other Googlers and engineers. Dr. Mitchell was fired shortly after that as well. To me, these events are a testament that tech companies do not have the public's best interest and will ultimately disregard issues of bias regardless of what they may otherwise say. To conclude, Dr. Kathy O'Neill has mentioned a proposal for a federal agency dedicated to regulating algorithms, much like the FDA is responsible for curating food and drugs to ensure that they are safe for consumption. This is a rough example of what I personally believe that a pipeline should look like before any algorithmic technology is deployed to the public. I also believe that a person's digital footprint should be protected as medical records are protected by HIPAA in order to reduce the harm that comes from data mining and unethically collecting biometric information. Here are my sources in MLA format, and that concludes my presentation. I want to thank Dr. Pamela Perry for her amazing support throughout the semester up until now. Thank you so much for your time and attention. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
All right, thank you so much, Rosie. That was a great presentation and very informative. Yeah, really great. Does anyone have any questions for Rosie?
My interest was sparked after just seeing a lot of issues with technology affecting underrepresented people. I myself was actually a victim of facial misidentification, and I actually just recently found that out. So what had happened was that when I went to visit my husband, who's actually stationed in Japan, and I came back in January of 2019, I was misidentified by a facial recognition software that was being used by the LAX police department or whoever, but by the police. And they held me for about 45 minutes without a word. They didn't let me use my phone. And ultimately, the only questions they kept asking me was holding my documents up and asking me repeatedly, "Is this you? Is this you?" And I'm like, "Yes, that's me." But yeah, that was one really big way that this affected me personally. But as I said, I only found out recently that that was the reason that I was stopped. I just thought it was discrimination, but I was actually facial recognition failure. As students, I love this question. What can we do as students? Stay informed if you can. Join sign up for email reminders or organizations like the Algorithmic Justice League, Fight for the Future. They engage in a lot of the work that goes into pressuring not just tech companies, but also our Congress and lawmakers into being able to regulate this technology to make sure that it works for the public and doesn't cause any harm. Just yesterday, Amazon announced that they extended their moratorium, which actually was supposed to last for a year starting June 2020. And that moratorium was extended thanks to the pressure of those organizations. So as a student, definitely just stay informed, get involved, add signatures. It takes like 10 seconds to just sign a little document that says, I support this. And yeah, that's it.
Thanks, Rosie. I know that you mentioned that you're discouraged. I'll let you get to Andrew's question maybe as well, but where do you see hope or a path forward in this? Because it is very discouraging, right? So where do you see hope or a path forward?
The way I see a path forward is, again, bringing in a more diverse team of engineers into the fray so that these issues of bias are not issues any longer going forward, right? Because you will get all the points of view from other students and future engineers that have these issues in mind. I mentioned that a lot of algorithmic bias stems from blind spots in instructions, right? So a lot of the times we don't give them the information needed when it comes to minorities because they don't have those experiences in mind because they don't have to think about them. So for example, someone who perhaps lives with a single parent is not going to be considered into a default family, what's considered normal, a two-family household, right? So if that goes into an algorithm, then you're considered an aberration and the algorithm will probably not favor you when it comes to whatever decision it's trying to make.
Thank you. There's a couple more questions in the chat if you want to get to them really quick, and then we'll move on to the next presentation.
Am I familiar with the social dilemma? I've heard of it and it is on my queue. I've just been so slammed with stuff that I haven't been able to watch it, but that is definitely on my things to do. And yeah, I do agree with the social, the cognitive dissonance that social media causes. And actually a lot of social media is one of the main perpetrators of continued algorithmic bias because based on the data that it harvests from people, it directs them to predatory things, for example, low-income people, gambling, and like predatory loan businesses that will take advantage of you and like perpetrate your stay in the low poverty bracket. And do you believe that social media and the algorithmic bias will change in the near future? I hope so. And that's why I think it's very important for people to really know and educate themselves about the impact that this has on their everyday lives, because this affects everyone. Everyone has a smartphone. Everyone has a digital footprint that has been harvested from them due to their social media usage. And the algorithms sort through that data. So absolutely. I am hopeful that there should be change, but that only depends in informing more people and telling your parents and telling your everyone that you can that this affects you. And just, again, sign up for those organizations that will send you updates on how legislation is going, if something is rising up that is extremely harmful and that you should notify your lawmaker that you're against.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rosie. Great job again. And yeah, thank you so much for answering all our questions as well. Okay, so we will move on to our third presentation of this session, which is by Audrey Jung. And it's the extent of online privacy and protection in the United States, an analysis of the extent of data mining and its relation to consumer privacy. And her faculty mentor was Pamela Perry as well. And I think this presentation will go very well with our last one again, which is, it's always nice when our presentations kind of fit together. So bear with me one moment while I share my screen with you all.
is Audrey, and today I'm going to be talking about the extent of online privacy in the United States. And to do this, I'm going to be covering what exactly data mining is, how our data is distributed, and what kind of laws are in place to protect us from companies selling out our data. And lastly, I'll be covering what we can do personally to exercise our own privacy rights. So in a span of a couple decades, the use of technology, as we know, has globalized to the point where over 85% of Americans now own a smartphone. And you can see this in the charts. According to the Pew Research Center, this is 50% higher than it was 10 years ago. So this means at this rate, sooner or later, practically all Americans are going to be either using smartphones, laptops, tablets, as well as a myriad of online services. So what does this mean when it comes to data accumulation and privacy? Is our privacy just as protected behind a screen as it would be in person? And how do we know where our data is even going? Because every app or service that we use can pull out information about us, whether it be TV show interests, GPS history, or even down to our daily sleeping habits. You know, at times we do recognize when we put out our data. So for example, if you're shopping on Amazon, you put in your name, address, and phone number. But the majority of data collection and sharing actually happens beyond our knowledge and perhaps without you even noticing. So data mining by definition is the extraction of patterns representing knowledge. So this means data is going to be stored in large databases as well as other massive information repositories. But in simpler terms, this basically means data mining is the process of collecting huge sets of data from people and then using them for purposes like analysis. And you can see why companies would want to use data mining techniques, because by analyzing these huge sets of data, your data, it can be very useful for companies. So for instance, you could use this technique for developing better marketing strategies or predicting trends, for example. So data mining is practically everywhere around us, from business to education to even healthcare. But what's going on is that our data is being shared, distributed, and sold even without our knowledge. How is this happening? A vast majority of companies work with third-party data brokers. And to just give a bit of context, data brokers are an individual company that specialize in collecting data. And this data is from either public or private records, and then they sell that or license that information to other third parties and companies. So here's a little infographic about data brokers. And you can see that Axiom has data for over 500 million consumers. So that is a very, very large number. And so these companies sell data, and buyers of this data are able to access a very wide range of information about a consumer. In California specifically, data brokers are required to register with the Attorney General, which at least adds a little bit more transparency in this process. But as of now, most states across the nation don't even require data brokers to publicly disclose their information. So in this way, it's very unsettling to see that consumers really don't know that their data is being sold to a third-party broker and who exactly the broker is then sending it to. So our privacy online is not protected because we really have no idea where exactly our information is going. And even if it doesn't mean selling data, many companies share access to our information. So for example, PayPal is an app or service that I use very often. And recently they disclosed a list of companies they share consumer data with. So this includes phone numbers, date of birth, bank account information, as well as different purchases. And so the sample chart here on the left shows some examples of what kind of third-party companies PayPal shares information with. And so you see here there's auditors, marketers, commercial partners, as well as financial product providers. But this chart doesn't actually do justice to the very long and extensive list that they disclose. And this is actually very recent. So this was disclosed on April 1st, 2021, which is not even 2 months ago. But I've included a short clip just scrolling through the third parties page. And so as you can see, PayPal shares data with more than 600 third-party companies across the globe, which is probably something that not a lot of people had read or heard about at all. So this is just a huge problem. And in the broader picture, it's not really what anyone signed up for. Our data is being sold, distributed, and analyzed with thousands of companies out there, not only PayPal. And so between the consumer and company relationship, our privacy is clearly violated. And we did sign privacy policies, but the majority of people don't read or understand them. And that's not necessarily the fault of the consumer, because these policies are, as we know, very hefty, long, and oftentimes wordy. And so this is even statistically proven. According to the Pew Research Center, over half of the American population believe that a company's privacy means that a company is going to protect the user's privacy and will not share data, which is in any case not true and a very common misconception. So in reality, the privacy policies that they put out doesn't protect consumer privacy at all, but instead practically protects the company in using the consumer's data. So if this is the case, what kind of laws are there to protect us? The issue is that there isn't one comprehensive federal law that governs data privacy. So although there are different complex patchwork of sector-specific laws, like laws regarding telecommunications, health, or even finance, most privacy-related laws are established by the state. So this means that there is a lack of adequate legislation right now in the United States, because there is no set mandate on protecting consumer privacy. So just to go over a few major sector-specific laws, the first data privacy law in the United States was established in 1974, and that's the US Privacy Act, which basically allows for citizens to access data held by government agencies. And then the HIPAA Act, established in 1996, protects your health information and patient data. So that can include treatment, payment, or even your hospital operations. And so these are just some examples of sector-specific laws. But the main point here is that we still are really lacking that broad-based federal legislation on user privacy. Specifically focusing on California, we have the California Consumer Privacy Act. And the reason why I'm focusing on California is because we have the most extensive privacy laws in the nation. So this kind of opens a possibility of what other states could also implement these laws, because again, a lot of these privacy laws are very ambiguous in most states. So just to go over this act, it's still very recent and relevant, and it aims to put more control on the consumer in protecting their own privacy. So as you can see right here, a consumer can now opt out of giving away personal information, as well as to know what kind of information is being collected. And the chart on the right gives you kind of like a visual representation of some states that have similar laws and what they entail. But again, there really is no set adequate federal law that's in place to protect consumers in all aspects, like the law we have here in California. And on this topic related to consumer privacy, I think it's also very important to know what we can do individually to protect our own privacy. So if you live in California, you have the right to ask a company to tell you what personal information it has about you, as well as to stop it from selling personal information. And so you can always submit a request and verify your identity, wait, and then the business is going to have 45 days to either accept or deny your request. And if they just flatly refuse to do that, Californians can contact the general attorney's office. So California does have this set structure on what Californians can do in the case that these businesses or companies are not adhering to these legal aspects. So just to summarize everything, we know that hundreds of data brokers, companies, and third parties sell and distribute our data. And not only is that a violation of our privacy, but there's just not yet an adequate federal law in place to protect the privacy of millions and millions of Americans in the United States. But we should be expecting more substantial privacy legislation in the next few years as California and another couple of other states take the lead. So I think we can really look forward to that and also participate in exercising our own privacy rights and protecting our information. Thank you for listening.
All right. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that presentation, Audrey. Again, it was yeah, very well connected to our other ones. So I'll open it up to other people for questions first, and we'll go from there. Does anyone have any questions for Audrey?
Hi, I'll go over the questions in the chat. So Rosie said, do you believe that the protections currently in place in California specifically are enough? And to answer that question, I would say yes. I would say 50-50, but California again has the most extensive privacy laws across the nation, and we are really leading the conversations of protecting consumer privacy. So in that way, I would say yes. But like I mentioned before, privacy policies are not always very clear. And as users, it's very difficult to kind of sit and read through all of these kinds of wordiness and this information because it is very long. And most of the times we just click accept without even knowing. But so I think that aspect, I think making things a little bit more clear is a big step that we're taking. And nowadays you should be able to see an opt-out option. I know that's still pretty recent, but that's still in progress. So yeah, I do think California is really kind of reaching that point, and really looking forward to what the possibilities that we can bring. Thank you, Rosie.
Following up on that, Audrey, do you know if there are other countries who have maybe better or more robust privacy laws and practices that kind of are best practice?
Yeah, I believe the UK does have more extensive privacy policies. But what I know is that another ambiguous thing about these privacy policies is that a lot of times we can use services of other countries, and those countries don't necessarily follow the privacy policies of our United States legislations. So that's just kind of something ambiguous. Because even if we do establish these state regulations and federal regulations in the future, these foreign policies is also something that we have to look out for, because not all of our services is based on the United States. So yeah. And then just to read the chat, I actually tried to go through the process of opting out. This particular has to be done on a company by company basis, so it has to be done with every single online service you use. I can with confidence say it was more tedious than doing my taxes. Oh, wow. Yeah. I actually have seen the opt-out option once, and it definitely was very tedious. So, yeah, I just think that companies just have to be a little bit more clear and concise with their kind of information. So I definitely do agree. Out of curiosity, are you more inclined to read through something like the term and conditions than before you started your research? Yes, I definitely I am more inclined to read. After seeing the PayPal, I believe I included a YouTube video, but I actually had no idea that my information is being shared with like thousands of companies, and not only in the United States. This is Hong Kong, Germany. So I had no idea, but I am more inclined, but I just wish as a consumer that it was a little more easier to read. So yeah, thank you, Andrew.
All right. Thank you so much, Audrey. If there are no more questions, if there are no more questions, we will go ahead and proceed to our last presentation of the session, which is by Daniel Kuhn. And it's called Video Gaming, the Leading Factor of Depression in Adolescence, an analysis of the overall problem with video gaming and researching if it affects adolescents and their mental health, specifically in regards to depression. And his faculty mentor was also Pamela Perry. And bear with me one moment while I share my screen and we will get started.
To my presentation.
Hello everyone, my name is Daniel Kum, and for my OMNI presentation, my title is The Leading Factor of Depression in Adolescence, Video Gaming. And I will be explaining whether excessive video gaming addiction among adolescents cause depression. And my research question is, does frequent video gaming among adolescents cause violence? This slide is called for the table of context, and it will help the listeners get a better understanding of my presentation and hopefully make my overall presentation become more straightforward. The introduction will be briefly explain the overall research question and the many obstacles that were faced when trying to find the truth hidden among these false articles. The article slide will be primarily based on the main issue of trying to find the answer to the question. The addiction slides is going over the system that was used to find the answer. And the depression slide will be the slide where I go over and give a conclusion to my research done. Especially in recent years, video gaming has only expanded and over 2.7 billion individuals have been playing or have played these video games. Since the exponential increase, there are a multifarious amount of controversies, as there are little to none evidence done on these video games. There are also many individuals who believe in the inaccurate information out on the web, and they'll only make these inaccurate information more popular than the truth. The topic and I will be focused on is a highly debated topic and has many false information regarding this specific topic. Especially in today's era, most things can be accessed just by searching them up, especially Google or Yahoo. There are search engines that are free and can be accessed anywhere. But that doesn't necessarily prove their accuracy. Most individuals often use the articles that are first provided on the internet and believe that they are 100% true and have no inaccuracy, which ties with my overall research project on the controversial topic of does video game cause depression among adolescents. Especially in this topic, there are many false information throughout the web, which causes a threat since the truth remains hidden among these false informations. This is the article slides. The articles that help out with my research was the most difficult step in finding whether or not video games do cause violence. Since there are many false information out there on the web, it was pretty difficult to find the truth among all of these false informations. And since there are so many false evidence and false claims in the many articles, they tend to overly exaggerate certain topics so that the audience may be more interested in that specific topic. Especially the article I came across, they were far different from the articles that were provided evidence to support their claims. They use the evidence from the scholarly articles, but often change up the wording to make it seem more relevant and intriguing. The overall newspaper article will always be misleading so that the individuals that came across this article may be more interested and read the whole overall article. The main challenge came from these articles, and I will be explaining the graphs chart. This slide is called addiction levels, and in recent studies, scientists have concluded different depression levels among adolescents by using a system called the IGDS, or the Internet Gaming Disorder Scale, Stockdale 1. The graph on the right is by the scholarly article from Video Gaming Addiction in Emerging Adulthood, Cross-Sectional Evidence of Pathology in Video Game Addicts as Compared to the Matched Healthy Controls. There are other ways to determine the addiction level and how it affects the mental health, such as the game motivation scale as well. This was all tested on adolescent individuals. This graph shows the difference in the game addicts and the individuals who do not and have control over their game. There is a significant change in those who play video games and those who do not. And the ones who are addicted have the greater ADHD symptoms, poor cognitive functions, and scored worse on the global measures mental health. With all of these combined, we can conclude with the graph that the video games addicts display poor cognitive functions and mental health compared to the non-addicts. This is the slide analysis of chart IDGS. The black indicates on the previous slide is the addiction, and the gray on the previous slide indicates those who have control over video games. Especially in mental and emotional health, there is significant difference from the individuals who are addicted than those who have a control over their video game. The physical health and social health have slight differences, but that are not too noticeable. The individuals who have a control tend to have less pornographic use as well. In all of the different charts, the individuals who have control always have the better advantage as well as in health and as well as pornographic use as well. They are significantly higher and has a more less likely chance of getting depression and other mental health illnesses as well. This is another graph that helped conclude my research question as well. This is the gaming disorder scale, and this is also from another scholarly article who has done their research with adolescents. They have conducted this experiment with roughly 150 adolescents and have done the GMS scale to test the addicts and the individuals who have not. This slide is the analysis of chart GAMS. There are two different numbers in every arrow, the numbers with the parentheses and the regular numbers without parentheses. The numbers with the parentheses indicate the individuals that do not have an addiction, and the non-parentheses indicate that they do have a game addiction. In all of the charts, the individuals who are addicts have a higher chance of getting depression and anxiety than those of individuals who do not. They also tend to have less social skills and poor health as well. That was concluded from the GMS scale. With all of these graphs and research papers, I have concluded that depression has some links with video gaming, but it is not 100% certain that video games actually cause depression. Even with both the GMS and the IBDS, they both have limitation and cannot provide the excessive video gaming causes depression among adolescents. Even with the graph, there's not too much of a significant change for the scientists to conclude that playing video games cause depression. Even so, depression may be contributed when playing too much video games. But when looking at the non-scholarly articles, as well as such as the newspaper articles, there are many inaccuracies going on with these research questions, and especially the topic of video gaming. There are many controversies going around, and have many newspapers has switched up the wording so that the research questions may seem more interesting towards individuals. This is the conclusion 2 slide. Even in the other articles with the GAMS, it states that depression will more likely be present when being an addict than someone who has been abstained from video games and or has not been addicted yet. And they have also concluded that video games may contribute to depression, but with their current level of technology, there are many flaws and they cannot really be certain of whether depression will be there when being an addict. And currently, the GAMS can only predict anxiety and depression levels. Both the GAMS and the IBDS have proven that depression levels will rise in adolescents if they have a severe game issue, but it is not 100% certain that it will appear there. Relating back to newspaper articles and scholarly articles, especially in the newspaper articles that I have came across, there are many flaws and inaccuracy when it comes to correlation between the facts and the graphs that were there. They were often extremely accurate and have either said that there was no correlation with depression or that there was that depression was caused by excessive video gamings, which is highly inaccurate as we can see from my research. So in conclusion, depression will rise significantly, but it does not necessarily cause or be caused by video gaming. This is the overview of my presentation. Most articles state that video gaming has no contribution to mental health disorder or even believe that excessive video gaming is the source of mental health disorder. These articles are false, as the many scholarly articles that I have read believe that excessive video gaming among adolescents only partially contributed to depression and maybe significant rise the chances of depression. It does not necessarily mean it does cause depression. From these articles, it is concluded that depression levels are slightly higher than those without an addiction. It currently cannot be scientifically proven, and the scale has many limitations. Thank you all very much for sticking me to the very end.
All right. Thank you so much, Daniel. So I will open it up now to questions. Who has some questions for Daniel? You can either put them into the chat or you can unmute yourself and ask them on screen as well.
What brought me to this topic was that, especially when I was younger, I would often have arguments with my parents about the video game issues, and it really just brought my attention, and I did some research to see whether or not depression or video gaming does cause depression.
Good.
I would personally say that I would say that I think that some video gamings does influence depression than other gamings. Some instance, you say story mode or traditional games, I would say it will cause less factors of depression than the games that MMOs. And I do have some personal experience. Especially my friend group and me included. We in our free time we usually play video gaming, and not many of us don't have any mental health problems, and some of us do have excessive gaming issues, but it's not really showing, and depression there's not really too much of a correlation between the two.
Kind of along with that, what surprised you about your research?
What surprised me was how many like false information was out on the web. Like when I like just searched it up like on newspaper articles, it like just said that depression does cause video gaming, is from video gaming. But after I do like more research from like scholarly articles, I figured out that it only like rises the levels of depression. It doesn't, there's no significant change between the two.
Thank you. Is this something that you'll do more research on, do you think?
I would probably, yeah, I think I'm gonna do more research on this topic because like, especially there's a lot of controversies going around, especially in video gamings other than depression and video gaming correlation. So I think I'll be doing more research. Would you describe your personal? I would say I was pretty shocked because especially me, I've been playing video gaming throughout my whole life, and I felt that like information should be true for everything, but like especially in this topic, like there's a lot of false information out there, and I was kind of shocked to see that people tend to like write false articles just to get people's attention.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Does anyone else have any final questions for Daniel? All right. Well, in that case, I think we will wrap up this session. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we will resume the conference at 1 p.m. if you are interested in joining us. We've got a few more presentations by students of Professor Pamela Perry, and then also a presentation on Jeopardy-style tests for higher education. So I think you could find some more interesting presentations if you want to join us at 1 p.m. Otherwise, I'm going to close down the room for the next hour or so. Thank you all so much. Again, all you presenters, you did a fantastic job.